My name is Brooke Alford, for those of you who don't know me. I wear a couple of hats at INPS. I chair the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Committee, and my day job is with Purdue Extension, where I'm an urban ag and natural resource educator. Purdue Extension is hosting this Zoom call tonight, and this presentation was coordinated by Bobby Avery Kimball, who's in the room tonight also. Thank you, Bobby. I'm going to go ahead and address our speaker tonight, or read his biography, introduce him, and then I will turn it over to him because I'm afraid I'm losing my voice. And as the presentation takes place, if you could enter questions into the chat, and then we'll do Q&A at the end of the presentation. Unless there happens to be a clarifying question that needs to be answered to get on with to understand the presentation, then I will just gently interrupt Dan and ask that question. Otherwise, just keep shooting the questions in the chat, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So Dan Norris is a certified turfgrass professional with Good Nature Organic Lawn Care. He has over 22 years of experience teaching people how this can be done. His organization promotes practices focusing on use of compost tea, natural plant oils, beneficial natural organisms, and organic weed suppressors to keep your landscape looking great without chemicals. Instead of synthetic chemical insecticides such as pyrethroids and neonics, natural plant extracts can be used to keep pesky bugs from ruining your day. His knowledge is often shared with local garden clubs, the National Wildlife Federation, the formerly Cleveland Botanical Garden, Ohio Master Gardeners, and Beyond Pesticides. He is a proud member of the Sierra Club and the Westlake Watershed Group in his hometown. He helped start an organic community garden in Westlake, Ohio, yay! And has his own no-mow mix of grass in his front yard. I am really excited that he's with us tonight. And at this point, Dan, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'll keep letting people in who are trickling in through the waiting room. You can go ahead and share your screen. And just one note to everybody, it should have come up on your screen, but this is being recorded and it will be available on the IMPS YouTube channel once it has been edited. Dan, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Brooke. So again, thanks for having me, give this presentation tonight. As Brooke alluded to, I am a certified turfgrass professional, so that's kind of more my area of expertise. So tonight I'm going to talk about a few different things in terms of controlling pests in your garden without toxic chemicals, and maybe, I guess garden/lawn. So I might be jumping around a little bit. So hopefully you guys will follow me, but certainly raise your hand or get in the chat if you have questions or whatever. But and then we'll have questions at the end as well. So just really quick background. I am with Good Nature Organic Lawn Care. We are based out of Cleveland, Ohio. Been here since 1999. We have a branch here in Cleveland, and then we have a branch in Akron, or I should say we service Akron out of the Cleveland branch. We have a branch in Columbus for 15 years, Chicago for about 3 or 4 years. This is, I think, our 6th full year in the Indianapolis area. So that's one of the reasons why we're talking to you, or I'm talking to you. We do have a local branch there by you folks. So, and then we opened up a branch this year in Detroit, and this is our 2nd year in Pittsburgh. So we're all around the Midwest here. So first off, I guess I'd like to kind of start off a little bit about what is organic. Sometimes people are confused by, what's organic, what's not. If you look in the dictionary, the first definition of organic is of or relating to or containing carbon or derived from a living or a once living plant or animal. So, it's a pretty loose, maybe not loose, but can be interpreted, I guess, loosely. Gasoline is mostly carbon. There's certain things that you certainly want around your yard or garden or lawn that are, quote unquote, organic. There are USDA organic standards, as I'm sure most of you are familiar with. there's the USDA organic label, there's the OEFFA. Being from Ohio, that's the Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association. They certify products for use in organic food production, as does OMRI, that Organic Materials Review Institute. So, excuse me, and the Oregon Tilt is another one too that certifies products for use in organic food production. And those, products are in accordance with the NOP, or the National Organic Program standards that were developed by the USDA back in like 2001, 2002, something like that. And those have evolved over the years, and some products have been eliminated and some have been added in over the years. I guess maybe the biggest takeaway from this is that there aren't any standards for lawn care or home gardening products. There aren't anything that at least as of yet. So there's nothing that is quote unquote certified organic for your lawn and garden and things like that. So a lot of what we do from our company standpoint is we do try to follow and look for products that are certified for use in organic food production, although they may not all be that way. So, and then of course there's organic or natural, I should say, versus organic. So there's a lot of natural things out there that you wouldn't want, again, around your yard or your home or your family. Asbestos is natural, so is arsenic. That's naturally occurring. There are organic based products out there. They can have organic and synthetic components, both. So just keep that in mind. Know your sources and ask questions about what products are out there, and do your research. So before you start using something that sounds maybe natural or sounds good, but you want to, again, make sure you're using the right thing. So this is just a quick, maybe not real quick, but it's a quote that I really like from, it's from a book that was published in 1999. So it's not a recent book, but it's called Natural Capitalism. And basically the idea is around 1948, when we started using synthetic pesticides, the United States used 50 million pounds of insecticides a year and lost 7% of the pre-harvest crop to insects. And today, again, this is 1999, with a 20-fold greater insecticide use, almost 1 billion pounds, the insects get 13%, and total U.S. crop losses are 20% higher than they were before we started using pesticides. So the chemical synthetic pesticides. So I guess the question is, do they work? Maybe not as good as we think. So, so how do we control, pests naturally? Okay, that's kind of our whole goal here. So the first thing to talk about is fertilize organically. Okay, chemical fertilizers are salt-based and they kill off the beneficial soil microbes. And also they push growth, leaving the plant more vulnerable to insects and disease. So anytime you put down a chemical fertilizer, they are generally high, just the way they're formed and made, they're high in nitrogen. So that nitrogen tells a plant, okay, I need to grow now. So that plant, whether it be your grass or a rose bush or whatever, is going to go ahead and put its energies and resources into growth. And because of that, it's going to be short on energy and resources in terms of its natural defenses. So ultimately, it makes itself more subject to and more vulnerable to insects and disease. So that's kind of the first thing in terms of fertilizer. So secondly, we talk about compost, and I think Brooke mentioned this. We use this in our in some of the products that we use, and we make our own compost tea, which is pretty, there's sophisticated ways to make compost tea, but the idea is you just basically are adding, a liquid to a good compost, and then the resulting liquid, if you will, or tea that comes out of that can be sprayed on your plants, it can be sprayed on your lawn. The compost itself in the, the granular or dry solid form, if you will, can be used as well. So adding compost to your soil, it creates an oxygen-rich soil that the beneficial microbes thrive in, and I guess this is sort of incomplete. Sorry, outcompete the pathogens that cause diseases and things like that. So, that's one of the key things in, like, with lawn diseases. We're feeding the microbes in the soil, and lawns are quite subject to fungal diseases at certain times of the year. And, there are fungicides out there, but if you have a good, rich, healthy soil, those beneficial microbes and those beneficial pathogens will outcompete the pathogens that cause those fungal diseases. So, and just keeping plants as healthy as possible. Stress plants actually attract insects. Healthy plants produce chemicals that deter pests. So again, this is, keeping the plants healthy. They're going to naturally emit chemicals that deter insects from coming around. And they've done some studies too, and they shows that plants will actually kind of communicate to each other when a plant is being attacked by an insect or pest. It'll send out and produce pheromones for plants in the area and let them know that this pest is in the area, and then that alerts the plants in the area to bulk up its defenses against this insect or pest. So, and I guess probably everybody here, because this is the Native Plant Society, knows that planting natives is a great way to control pests naturally, because the natives are more adapted to the region. They're naturally able to defend themselves against pests. They've developed those over many years. So how do I go organic? Another way in looking at this from an organic standpoint or a natural or non-chemical standpoint is enlist the help of beneficial insects. So, and I won't go read all these, but you get the basic idea. The braconid wasp, they eat caterpillars and they eat flies and beetle larvae and leaf miners, true bugs and aphids, things like that. Your ground beetles eat asparagus beetles, cutworms, things like that. Hoverflies, they're going to eat things. Lacewings, lady beetles and ladybugs, you're probably all familiar with those for sure. There's predatory bugs, there's soldier beetles, and they're all going to help to take care of, either lawn and or plant damaging insects. Here's more spiders, taconid flies, mini wasps. Okay. Just planting, certain plants too are going to attract certain insects that beneficial insects love, like sweet alyssum, hairy vetch. And again, I'm not going to read all these, but thyme, catmint, buckwheat, dill. There's a whole list of these here. This is 19 different plants that beneficial insects love. And if you plant those, they're going to be around. They're going to take care of those, insects that are going to be non-beneficial. Again, here's some more herbs that are just, good companion plants: anise, basil, garlic, mint, tansy. Tansy is a great one as far as repelling, and it's not listed here, but it can also repel mosquitoes. So just kind of for humans' sake, repelling mosquitoes was a nice thing. And again, I think Brooke had alluded or mentioned this earlier, this will be shared by everybody. So again, this is kind of a long list of different insects. Like on the left-hand side, it's the insect that you're, the offending insect, if you will. And then on the right-hand side is the insect that you want to attract to take care of those insects. Okay. So your grubs, you've got your different wasps, your aphids and mites, your ladybugs, okay, things like that, caterpillars, again, the parasitic wasps, things like that. And then the next list I have is, how do you attract those predatory insects? And again, this goes back to some of those other slides, but you actually have kind of a one-on-one, if you want to attract this insect, then this is the plant you want to plant for that, okay? So one thing I wanted to touch on too, just briefly, is IPM, or integrated pest management. Okay, that has to do with, and maybe some of you guys are familiar with that already, but integrated pest management is basically looking at all aspects of managing a pest or disease before you would reach for, or before you would use a chemical solution. So, first off, and being in the business for so long, we get a lot of, people that call us or have stories over the years, people like it, in early March, they'll call and they'll say, hey, I've got, crabgrass in my yard. You got to come and kill my crabgrass. Well, in early March, nobody has crabgrass because it hasn't germinated yet. So, that's so they've got something in their lawn, but it's not crabgrass, but obviously it's something that we need to identify. So that's the first thing, is identify the plant. I use an example of the white spittle, which it looks like spittle bug damage on a bristlecone pine, but that's actually normal. That's something that the plant itself produces. But people have called us and said, hey, I've got this, bug, on my plant. What do I do? How do I get rid of it? How do I kill it? So again, we want to first identify the plant, and then we can go from there. So, and then the next thing is to identify the insect or disease. Some are beneficial, or they don't require treatment. Again, going back to a lawn example, there's something called a big-eyed bug. Those are very similar to, and they look a lot like chinch bugs in a lawn. So people call us, or they might think that they have a chinch bug, and when we get out there and identify it, it's actually a big-eyed bug, which is actually beneficial. So the big-eyed bugs actually eat the chinch bug. So again, you don't necessarily want to reach for or use any sort of chemical control, or maybe even organic control at that point, because you do have those, you've got the predators around and you want those predator bugs around. So also, and know the thresholds. Small insect populations are usually not a problem. Part of IPM protocol is to scout and to look for and to collect samples of insects on crops and things like that, and do a count. So I attend a local farmers market every Saturday, and one of the fruit people that I deal with, or that we get peaches and other fruit from, they are an IPM farmer, and so they have the local extension come out, and they look at their how many, they do some traps, they set up some traps, they count the bug populations, and then they know whether or not they either have a problem, or if they have to spray or not. And in most cases they don't. So but the orchard, they actually list if they did have to spray anything at all, but in most cases they don't. So so that's kind of neat to be able to do that. So and IPM, to that point, it saves money. So your traditional chemical, if you will, orchards and producers, they just by habit go out and spray for insects, and again, if they don't have to, then they're saving money by not spending resources on unnecessary chemicals. So obviously, not spraying an insecticide or pesticide keeps the balance. If there's no treatment, that means that you're not wiping out beneficial insects, birds and bees, things like that, as I'm sure you're all aware. And of course, it can be fun and educational. You can learn about insects and plants that you didn't before. So here are some pictures of typical insects that you might see around your yard, your garden, your plants. We've got aphids there, Japanese beetles, leafhoppers, flea beetles, slugs, and the black vine weevil. So that kind of gives you a visualization of these insects. And now we're looking at some of the natural things we can do to help, if these are an issue, what can we do to help control them? So aphids, the first thing with aphids, and this goes for some other insects as well, but just a strong stream of water. Aphids, a lot of times, once you spray them and get them off of your plant, they become disoriented enough, they may never make it back onto the plant. So you can also use insecticidal soaps, garlic, plant yarrow, again, going back to your beneficial plants that are going to attract predators. Of course, ladybugs are good predators. Anise is another herb too that you can plant. Japanese beetles, a lot of people have probably heard of milky spore and or used it. That's a good natural control for Japanese beetles. It's a naturally occurring, bacterium that doesn't hurt any other animals or insects. Beneficial nematodes, that's another widely used, I guess, by our company, because we use these in the spring and or the fall to control non-damaging insects. And again, they're beneficial, meaning they're not going to hurt any good insects, if you will. They're not, there's no poison, no chemicals. They're not going to hurt people or pets or anything like that. You can, if you're not, if you have some time and you can do it, you can hand pick them, the beetles off of your plants, your roses and things like that. We generally encourage folks to not get one of those beetle bags. They have a pretty strong sex lure hormone, pheromone in there, excuse me, and that will attract beetles in from, further away than what they would normally come to your yard. So in general, we tell people don't get a beetle bag. A lot of times we'll tell people to get, buy one for your neighbor and then put it in their yard and then they'll out, but no, just kidding. So anyways, again, I won't read all this, but mites, again, strong stream of water, black vine weevils, the birds love them, nematodes again, slugs, again, encouraging your beneficials to eat those guys. There are a couple products I list here, diatomaceous earth and iron phosphate, flea beetles, and then leaf hoppers as well. Okay, so some specific controls. There is again, in our business, we use a concentrated garlic juice. It's basically, it's like it says, it's from a special form of garlic. And they put into a concentrated juice. We mix it with water. And then and the actual product name is mosquito barrier or garlic barrier, it's called. And we spray that on the lawn for people. We spray it into their trees and shrubs, bushes, anywhere where the insects might hide. It puts out a pretty strong smell of garlic, which some folks may or may not be offended by. But I guess the good news is if you don't like the smell, it does dissipate within a couple hours for humans. Insects will continue to smell it for up to 30 days. It helps to repel fleas, ticks, mosquitoes. Obviously, mosquitoes are the main thing, but also fleas and ticks. It also helps with just general nuisance insects. We also had clients that had chiggers, and it does work with chiggers too. So I don't know if that's something that you guys get in your area, but generally in Northern Ohio, we don't see those in Cleveland, but in our Columbus branch, we have had people report of chigger infestations, and the mosquito barrier really helps with those. So neem oil, you may have heard of this before. It is a naturally occurring plant oil. It's extracted from a tree that's native to India, and it is actually a insecticide, fungicide, and miticide. It is something that they make toothpaste out of. Somebody told me one.
So in this ear, I hear the TV. This ear.
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, Dan. Let me
Okay.
make sure everybody's muted here. Okay, I think we're all muted now.
Okay. So the neem oil, again, it's an insecticide, a fungicide, and miticide. It's extracted from a tree that's native to India. They do make shampoo out of it. They make soap. Somebody told me once they use a neem oil toothpaste because it is antibacterial. It is certified for use in organic food production. It is, technically an insecticide, so you do have to be careful how you use it, and you want to follow the instructions. But that is a very, popular, item that you can use yourself, or again, our company does use that. So I don't have any brand names listed. There is one called Rose RX, I believe. But you should be able to find that, if you look for neem oil, you should be able to find a number of different brand names that sell that product. And some are concentrated and some are, in a ready to use form. So cedar oil, we do use cedar oil in our, when we do we call it our home bug barrier applications. That's basically for around your home. This is not necessarily any insects that would hurt your plants or your landscape or your garden, but it can be used for that for sure. And again, it is an insecticide. Cedarcide is the brand name that we use, but there's other ones out there. Spinosad is a naturally occurring bacterium that was discovered kind of by accident. And it's called Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew is the brand name, is one of the brand names that's out there if you're looking for it. But that helps to control caterpillars and other worms, damaging worms, cutworms, things like that. And then the beneficial nematodes, again, I mentioned those earlier. Those can be used for grubs and other insects. They are the beneficial nematodes. That is, they are naturally occurring. You in a healthy soil, you've probably got quite a few out there already in your soil. When we apply these, they're just basically applied with water, and they are soil dwelling. So we kind of look for a day when it's not so hot, not a hot sunny day, but more of a cloudy, rainy type day, and the rain or the water will help work these into the soil. But they go down into the soil. The nematodes do. That's where they dwell. If there are grubs, they'll infect the grub. They're a parasite. They infect the grub. They kill the grub, and then they actually multiply inside the grub. And then there's different strains of these nematodes. Some are what they call hunters. In other words, they will actually travel through the soil looking for food sources. Other ones just kind of hang out in the soil, and if a grub or something happens to come by or is nearby them, they'll go after it. So these beneficial nematodes also control fleas and ticks in their larval stage as well. So in addition to the grubs, and the one reason we use the beneficial nematodes over the milky spore is that the milky spore only works on the larval stage or the grub stage of the Japanese beetles, where the beneficial nematodes will go after different species of the grubs, which a lot of the studies or some of the studies are showing that the grubs that show up in people's lawns are not always the Japanese beetles, but they might be other, again, species like a mass chafer, southern mass chafer, European chafer. So the nematodes, again, will take care of all those varieties. So, and Larvinem is the brand name that we use, but again, there's other ones out there. So here's some other non-chemical controls in a kind of like, those were mostly liquids. These are in kind of a dry formula, if you will. Diatomaceous earth, you may have heard of this before. Insect dust is the brand name. There are, again, other brand names out there, but diatomaceous earth is, I should say, ancient forms of fossilized algae, which are diatoms. And those have been ground into a powder. And it looks kind of just like baby powder or something like that. So if you use this, or when you use this, you want to be careful. You don't want to necessarily ingest it. They do tell you to wear a mask, but it is completely non-chemical and it kills crawling insects. So it's one of the major advantages to this is that it's obviously not toxic, but also one of the downsides to chemicals is that over the years we've created superbugs that have become resistant and immune to or adapted to the chemicals. So you have to use a different chemical or a stronger chemical or more chemical, where there's no way for them, because it's physically killing the insects. They can't develop a resistance to that. Okay. Cedar granules, that's, again, Cedarside is the company. It is, like the cedar chest, like you had a cedar chest, or you've heard of the cedar chest, keeping the moths and the bugs out for your clothing. Same idea. The cedar granules, it puts out a scent that the insects don't like, and it repels them. And we use the cedar granules in our treatments when we do, again, our home bug barrier. We use the cedar spray, and then we also use the cedar granules as well. And we've also used the cedar granules in people's lawns, more specifically targeting ticks, if they have an issue with ticks, to help repel those. So Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT for short. This can be dry or liquid. It comes in both forms, but it is basically, again, kind of like the milky spore. It's a natural bacterium that's toxic to caterpillars and other grubs in the lawn, or damaging insects in your soil. The two kind of brand names, if you will, are Grub Gone and Beetle Gone. The next thing I have listed is row covers, okay, which maybe a lot of people have heard of that, but it's kind of it is a non-chemical way, but a basic way. You can screen out Japanese beetles, potato beetles, all sorts of leaf miners, different insects when you put these over your crops. And it still allows sunlight and water or rain in, but it will keep out the insects. So One, over the years in having a community garden or working on the community garden, we had a problem once with cucumber beetles, and doing some research, we found that, if we delay the planting of just a little bit, a couple of weeks, delaying the planting of summer cucurbits like cucumbers, a few weeks, you can help avoid most significant damage from the cucumber beetles, because when they show up, if the cucumber, if the plant isn't there, they move on and they don't come back. So, that's a nice non-chemical way to deal with insects. So, and then it's, again, speaking of milky spore, the actual bacterium is Bacillus populi, and that is, again, only for Japanese beetles, but it is something that's been around for quite some time and proven to be effective. And milky spore does come in two forms. There's a granular form that you have to apply 3 times in consecutive years. And then there's the powder form, which the powder form, once you put that in, it's more expensive, but once you put it in, then it's, I think for the manufacturer, it's guaranteed for 10 years. So once you get it into the ground, into the soil. And then, another little kind of trick, if you will, is interplanting. So you don't plant all the same plants in a row. Like in your garden, you don't put all tomatoes in a row, but you put a tomato and then you might put a cucumber, or you might put something else. And a lot of times the insects will show up, and if it's they say a cucumber beetle or something like that, it gets on a cucumber, it might do a little damage, and then it moves on to the next cucumber plant. Well, if you don't have a cucumber plant there, it's a different plant, then it gets disoriented, whatever, and it leaves. So that's kind of a neat thing to do to, discourage, insects. So now, in terms of like critter control, there's different things that we apply or we can sell, or you can buy yourself. Again, garlic is a great repellent for not only for mosquitoes and fleas and ticks, but also for certain animals. Garlic, cinnamon, clove, I kind of say, etc., because Nature's Defense, the product that I'm referring to here, repels 24 different animals. It's a dry granular product, and you apply that around your plants. You can apply it around your home for rodent control, for mice and rats and things like that as well. But it is all non-chemical and non-toxic. It is basically putting out a scent that the animals don't like, and it'll drive them away. So castor oil, that's a product that it's called Mole Chase. We use that to discourage moles in people's yards. It works in 2 ways. It works by scent and by taste. The scent they don't like, but then also the taste they don't like either. The product we use, the Mole Chase, they take corn cobs and they grind them into teeny tiny granules, and then they coat them with castor oil, and then that product gets applied over your lawn or wherever you're having the issue with the moles, and it kind of works its way down into the soil. And then as the moles burrow or tunnel, they'll smell it, and or they'll ingest these granules, and that gives them a upset stomach, if you will, or they don't like that taste, and it'll drive them away back to a wooded area. So one note with moles, I know a lot of times people will say that they have, if they have grubs and they're going to have moles, or I guess vice versa, if they have moles, they feel like, okay, then I must have grubs. And that could be the case, but based on the research, the number one food source for moles is actually earthworms. So a lot of times it's not necessarily a grub issue, and that's not why you have the moles. They might be there for the worms themselves. So cayenne pepper, that's another, just again, animal repellent. Bonide is the manufacturer. They make one called Bonide Hot Wax Animal Repellent, and that can be applied. That's a spray that can be applied, to your plants. Okay, now talking about weeds a little bit. There's a few different things out there that, again, either we use in our business or that we sell, or that you can buy. And for do-it-yourself type situations, there is, over the years, there was a product called Burnout. We used that for a number of years, and we sold it. And I think you might still be able to buy it, but I'm not sure. I didn't list it here, but it is a acetic acid, and clove oil combination. Or I take it back. I think it's now citric acid and clove oil. So it was like a vinegar clove oil. Then they switched it up to more of like a citric acid. But either way, that's more or less been replaced by this dead weed brew. That's another kind of acid, but it is for organic gardening. It is certified for use in organic food production. And that's dead weed brew is what they call a non-selective herbicide. So it's like it's an organic alternative to Roundup or something like that. So you wouldn't want to spray dead weed brew on your lawn because you would kill the grass itself. That's only in areas where you want to make sure that you kill everything. Okay. The second one I list here is the corn gluten meal, which you may or may not have heard of that, but that is a natural pre-emergent. It's also 40% by weight crude protein, so it's about an 8 or 9% percentage nitrogen. So it is a good organic fertilizer. It does over time, as it builds up in the soil, it does help to prevent crabgrass and other annual weeds from sprouting. It was discovered by mistake back in 1989 at Iowa State University. The corn gluten meal is actually, it's a byproduct of when they wet mill corn, which I don't 100% know what that is, but it's when they process corn. This is what's kind of the resulting byproduct, if you will, and it's been made into a product. And pre-merge is one of the brand names, or maize is one of the other ones. So, and that corn gluten meal can come in a granular form. It is also available in a liquid form as well. So, now liquid iron, that's kind of the companion product to dead weed brew. That's called lawn weed brew. And that product is okay to use on your lawn because it won't kill the grass when used, per the instructions, but it will start to it'll coat the leaves of your weeds and stop the photosynthesis process of dandelion and plantain and some of your other broadleaf weeds. Not like a regular, chemical herbicide per se, like Weed Be Gone or something like that, but it is a good non-chemical alternative to those traditional, 2,4-D and other chemicals like that. So, of course, there's always a hand tool. There's a product we sell. It's called the Weed Out. We used to sell one called the Speedy Weedy, and I think they stopped making that, but it might still be out there, the Speedy Weedy. The one we have now is called the Weed Out tool, and that is it's about a 2.5 or 3 foot long tool, and you don't have to bend over. It's kind of a nice tool to pluck out dandelions and other weeds that have that kind of central taproot. There's an ammoniated soap or fatty acid. Basically, that's what that product is made of. It's called Final Sand. And that is kind of like the dead weed brew in that it's a non-selective herbicide. So it's something that you would spray on your sidewalks and, mulch beds, anywhere where you want to kill everything and not the grass. But that's called Final Sand. And that's proven to be a pretty good product. We've had good results with that. And that also is certified for use in organic food production. So, and then the last one I list there is boron or borax, if you think of it in those terms, like your 20 mule team borax, but it's available as a brand name called Solubor. But the idea there is we use this in our business to help control ground ivy or creeping Charlie in lawns. And again, it's not like a regular chemical. It's not going to completely kill the ground ivy, but it has shown to do a good job in kind of knocking it back and controlling it to a pretty good extent. And, again, wanting to stay away from the chemicals, it's a nice alternative to the traditional chemical herbicides that are out there. And that's mostly for ground ivy. It'll help with some other weeds, but really that's the main one that we're trying to eliminate there is ground ivy or creeping Charlie. I guess that's kind of the end of my presentation for the most part. I don't know what questions you folks have. I do list here, and again, you can get this, if you want to get the copy of this, but that's our website, whygoodnature.com. The other one I list there, the second one I list there is beyondpesticides.com, which is a national nonprofit group that helps to educate people about not using chemicals and about different, things that you don't want to, pesticides and why you want to avoid those. And then the last one I didn't didn't really talk too much about this, but there's the soilfoodweb.com. That's a good website. Dr. Elaine Ingham, she's a microbiologist, and she has a lot of good information about working with compost teas, and how to create the conditions in the soil that are going to favor whatever plant you're trying to grow versus the weeds. So a lot of again, what we do from an organic standpoint is feeding the soil, feeding the microbes in the soil, like I mentioned before, and really building up a healthy soil so that your plants can be healthy.
Dan, thank you so much. That was a wealth of information. We really appreciate that. I took a lot of notes, took pictures of some of your slides. Thank you. We've got a question here from Bobby, and she asks, how does diatomaceous earth kill insects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the fossilized, the diatoms, which are the ancient forms of algae, are ground into a powder. Okay. And basically, if you or I were to get that on our hands, it's not a big deal. Again, you don't want to necessarily breathe it in. It could be a lung irritant, if you will, because it is a powder. But basically that powder is like shards of glass to an insect. So what happens is when an insect comes in contact with that, it is like tiny shards of glass, and it basically slices up their exoskeleton, and it dehydrates the insect or kills it because all of its bodily fluids leak out. So I guess it's not a pretty picture, but but it is, that's how it works. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
No, just real quick. I just happen to think of this. Not that this necessarily related in the big, but years ago I was at a grass-fed organic beef farm, and the cattle were out ranging around in the pastures eating grass, and the farmer took us over and he said, we do bring them in and we feed them some different, couple different grains just to get them a little bit healthy, but 99% of what they're eating is grass, so. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, that's diatomaceous earth. And they actually fed it to the cattle, and it actually killed any kind of bacteria they had, in bad bacteria and parasites in their intestines. So they actually fed that to cattle.
Wow, that's interesting. I was just gonna say, I raise chickens, and I use diatomaceous earth in their coop for mites control. But a friend did tell me recently that what you just mentioned, inhaling it wouldn't be good. So I do try and use a mask now, because I never really thought about that, actually.
Right. I mean, you have to be careful. I've used it quite a bit myself, and I have used it without a mask, but I'm very careful in how I use it. But yeah, I mean, you just have to be aware.
Okay. Yeah, no, good point. Couple other questions. Does compost tea have to be continuously aerated before it's applied?
It does. I mean, yeah, it has to be. I guess I'm not a complete expert on that, but yeah, there is something to be said for, keeping the bacteria, the good bacteria, if you will, and those microbes, active. Yeah. So you want to get, I know when we brew our compost tea, we brew it, and then it has to be used within 24 to 48 hours for it to be,
Gotcha.
viable, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
But that is a good question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Laura asks, what is a great non-toxic fertilizer that can be used around pets?
Around pets? Is that what she said?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the corn gluten meal is a really good one. I mean, we do, and I guess fertilizer, I don't know if she means like for your lawn or whatever, but I mean, we do on our online web store, we do sell a product called Healthy Lawn, and there's a kind of a spring summer blend, and there's a fall blend, and that's 100% organic, and that is corn gluten based. There's other things in there too, but it is all natural and shouldn't have any, ill effects, if you will, with your pets. Yeah. I mean, everything we do in our business that we apply can be, your pets can go on it, and there's no chemicals at all.
Okay.
So there are some other brands out there that you would have to, kind of look and look at the package and make sure it's, what you want to do. But Espelma makes an organic one. That's one company out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And compost is quite safe as well, correct?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it should be fine. I mean, as long as it's fully, cured, if you will. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the key. I mean, I think sometimes people think that compost smells or has a bad, but really if it's done properly, if it's been heated up to a proper temperature of 140 degrees, that'll kill all your pathogens. And compost is great stuff. Yeah, just in and of itself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for posting that, Bobby. So your website is is whygoodnature.com your website?
It is, right. Yep. whygoodnature.com. Yeah. And I guess one real quick comment about compost. I know in my local city where I live, they do a leaf humus. They collect the leaves from our curb at the end of the, in the fall, and then they windrow that and they compost it, and then they sell it back to the residents, but it's relatively cheap. But that's something you might investigate, or see if any of your local municipalities do that. Because it is a great resource. So
yeah. Unfortunately, Indy used to do that and they stopped doing it. I'm not sure why. But they did. I do know one of the municipalities, I forget which one. I think it's Beech Grove in southern Marion County. They do leaf composting and you can pick it up there. I believe you can still do that.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Kristen asks, do you have any recommendations for controlling bindweed?
I mean, not off the top of my head, other than, that final sand or the deadweed brew, those that, both of those might have some impact on that. Bindweed is, very, tenacious and can be pretty.
Yes, it is.
And, once it gets entrenched, it's definitely hard to get rid of. So, and probably, in the big picture, there is probably something going on in the soil that's favoring that weed, and that's probably why you have it. But if it's there and you want to try to kill it, then I would say, I would look to maybe final sand or the deadweed brew.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very persistent one, isn't it?
It is, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you talked about IPM, integrated pest management, and I'm so grateful for that. That's something that at Extension we do a lot of educational programming around.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, the identification of the pest is crucial to being able to manage it. Do you recommend any particular resources to help identify pests?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, again, being that we're in Ohio, we do work with, Ohio State a lot. And you work for Purdue, so I'm assuming I don't know, do you guys have any,
we do have extension resources.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Bobby, I can pull some of those if you want to send it out to everybody that registered for this as a resource for identifying pests.
And and honestly, I just not too long ago got a new iPhone, so that does have the plant identification, and I don't know if it does anything with insects, but I know the iPhone does the plant.
I was wondering that too, like picture.
I just kind of, now that you mentioned that, I just thought, I wonder if that would, Now, granted, it's not always right because, there's certain things I'm 99.9% sure, and then I take the picture with the iPhone and it says something else like, I don't think that's right. But
I know.
But anyways, that's a possibility, or the extension, like I said,
Okay, and often, and since I started working for Extension 5 years ago, I have found because it's our charge to deliver research-based information to the community. When I am trying to find information on something, I will Google a topic such as, treating squash beetles, managing squash beetles. And then I'll just put the word extension on it. And then that way I know it's a more research-based publication.
Okay. That's a good idea.
It's not at Purdue. It's I'm sure at another extension.
Right.
So it is 10 till the hour. And I just wanted to ask, are there any more questions out there? You can put them in the chat. You can unmute, turn your video on, and ask any final questions you might have for Dan while we still have him. So Vicky asks, not a bug or weed, but any ideas to organically treat powdery mildew?
Yeah, I mean, there are some organic treatments for that. I mean, you can kind of mix up your own, mixture of hydrogen peroxide and baking soda and make a spray out of it. I mean, powdery mildew in almost every case is cosmetic, so it's not going to hurt the plant. And, I understand you may not, so I mean, so I think that's, one thing to keep in mind. I guess it depends on what your plant is also, increasing air circulation. Sometimes plants get overgrown, they get too big, especially like with, like crabapple trees and apple scab, which, a lot of times you need to open up that canopy and get air circulating in there. If you can get air circulating in there, then chances are good you won't have that excess moisture, which leads to the powdery mildew. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And that's another step of integrated pest management is planning ahead. So you have a certain species in your garden and know what might be some of the pests that you're going to have to control for. And that way you can be on the lookout for it. In our programming in Urban Ag, we really encourage growers to always be scouting their garden as much as possible, just walking through, looking for those pests that you think you might have.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions for Dan tonight? I think that's everything for now, Dan. Thank you so much for taking the time. It really was a wealth of information. We really appreciate it. I'm definitely going to go take a look at your website.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Yeah, for the opportunity.
We had one more question come in.
Okay.
Any suggestions for bishop weed or ground elder? Or for creeping Charlie?
So creeping Charlie, the boron, okay.
Right.
And some people will make up their own, solution, and there's probably, and maybe, again, you could Google it and maybe put extension on there. I don't know, but like a 20 mule team borax solution. As far as what was the other bishop weed? I mean, again, that's it is invasive. So again, if you have it in an area and you can just spray it, I would go back to the final sand or the dead weed brew. But yeah, the creeping Charlie, obviously if it's in your lawn, it's mixed, you don't want to spray a non-selective herbicide necessarily, but sometimes it is a matter of moisture in the soil sometimes, but it again, it's pretty tenacious. It can kind of get in there and hard to get rid of. Yeah.
Yep.
A combination of the either the final sand if it's an area where you can spray anything, but in the lawn, look for that Solubor or a borax treatment product or boron containing product, and or the lawn weed brew. The lawn weed brew too, that's the liquid iron, and that over time can help to knock that back too with repeated applications. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And to anybody else who joined late, this is being recorded. It will be on INPS's YouTube channel as soon as it's edited and ready for release. Normally it's about a 1 week turnaround. And then real quick before we go, Bobby's here. Again, Bobby's one of our co-vice presidents who does the scheduling of these presentations. Thank you, Bobby. And can you just tell us a little bit about next month's presentation? Just a little teaser.
Sure. We have an exciting presentation from Brian McGowan, the Extension Wildlife Specialist, who's going to talk to us about native plant gardening for hummingbirds. So if you want to learn lots about hummingbirds and gardening for them, how to support them and get them to visit your yard, check on the link and register today to attend that online meeting.
Great. And if you didn't notice, the registration link is in the chat provided there. Thanks, Bobby. Dan, thank you again so much for joining us tonight. We've
Oh, yeah,
learned a
you're
lot.
welcome.
And I know I took a lot of pictures, and I'll probably go back and watch a few parts of the presentation myself. So thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care. Appreciate
Everybody have a great evening. We'll see you next time.
it. Bye-bye.
Bye.